Hey guys, Darren here. Welcome to Mayhem Country Living. I want to talk to you about something. I was listening to a couple of lectures today while I was working, had my headphones in, and it just led me to really go down a rabbit hole and start thinking. And I thought, I need to share this rabbit hole with you guys. Before we do that, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, consider joining us on Patreon because you get access to a whole lot more rabbit holes. And I got to give a shout out to a couple of people, Sergeant Rocco and his lovely wife, Serena. Tsarina. Now, back to your regularly scheduled program. Our grandparents, 2 generations back, us, our parents, our grandparents, probably some of the smartest people we ever had access to and could get information from. A lot of people say, oh, Meemaw people, they were just old tottering around, talking about what they did when in the Dust Bowl and all that stuff. Beg to differ. Time management. Let's take that. My grandparents could take a 24-hour day and put 40 hours into it and have time to go to church afterwards. I don't know how they did it. I cannot. They were able to manage their time so much better than what we can do now. I guess it was probably based off of organization skills and just having had to deal with less so much more than we have. Let's say it that way. They were much more in tune with nature and with what was going on in their environment. I remember Granddaddy telling me one day, he said, boy, we need to go ahead and start getting the onion patch ready, because he did onions, garlic, and when he did onions, he had like a 10-foot round bed of onions, and he had a 10-foot round bed of garlic. And so he would say, it's almost time to do the onions. And I would say, okay, how do you know? We'd be sitting out there in our jackets, on the back porch. And he would look up and he would just say, it's about time, boy. And I said, how do you know, Granddaddy? He says, well, there ain't no leaves on the trees, boy. And the sun comes over here and hits that garden bed first. So we're going to have to do that. He was in tune with what was going on. That's a small microcosm of the environment, his environment. But he knew what was going on. He was in tune with that area. Our grandparents could stretch a freaking dollar and could make a penny scream. My grandparents were not very wealthy people at all. I'm going to say they probably did not exceed a 6th grade education, and neither could read or write very well until my mother taught them how to read and write. But by God, they could count money and they could add it up. And so Granddaddy knew if he cleaned your carburetor and put it on there, and you owed him $14.35 for the time in the gasket. He knew. They had time to learn things and to develop them. That old man could play 16 different instruments. Couldn't read. Couldn't write. He could read sheet music. Go figure. And he learned everything. Every song he ever played, he learned by ear. My grandmother was about the same way. She played the piano in the Church of the Nazarene, Childersburg, Alabama, and it was amazing what they were able to accomplish. They had a very deep and abiding respect for each other. I don't know if they had a lot of love for each other. I don't know. I don't know. Granddaddy knew what he had to do this, to do this, to do this, to take care of his wife and his two daughters, and me later on when I came on as a grandson. He knew what he had to do. Nothing else mattered beyond that scope. My grandmother was the same way. She knew what she had to do. She had to do this, 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 and this, and this to take care of her husband, her two daughters, and her grandson. Don't think it was a sexist thing or anything like that, because Granddaddy, he was a pulpwooder at one time in his life, and he would get up about 4 o'clock in the morning. He would get up and he would make biscuits from scratch, or we would have biscuits left over or cornbread left over. But if there wasn't any, he would make biscuits from scratch. We would do bacon, ham, gravy. Can't remember what else. Sometimes butter beans to go along with breakfast. That was just the way it was. You ate good. Might not have been what you wanted, but by God, you were full. And you had enough when you were through eating. You know how you know when you had enough? Because they would say, quit eating. Boy, you had enough. So you'd had enough. Now, food preservation. Our grandparents were so good at setting aside, laying aside for tomorrow, whether it be smokehouse, drying, whether it be root cellar, canning, preserving food, jarring, ball jars. They knew how to do it. I recall my granddaddy would go get out a jar of peaches. They canned and preserved everything. Canned and preserved everything. And he would look at it and say, baby boy, got mold on the top of it. And I'd look, he called me baby boy. And he'd look at it and he'd say, baby boy, we got mold on the top of it. And so he would scoop out the mold, and he says, you got to get all the hairs out of it. And he would scoop down to the veins, put it on like a little bowl, and then you would put that on your biscuits and everything. And what he'd scooped out, he'd take that out and that would go to the chickens. Nothing was wasted. Not a damn thing was wasted. I'm trying to just go over this and over this. Recycling, repurposing, reusing. At the time this was going on, there wasn't Ziploc bags. I mean, you had those. You had the really hard, thick plastic containers that you put in your freezer, quarts, half pints, stuff like that. You put those in your freezer and you'd freeze them, and you would like write on the top of them squash and onions, you know, that kind of stuff, and you would set that out, and that's how you would do it. But aluminum foil, string, no joke, paper clips, nails. Granddaddy, every old refrigerator that he came across, he would bring it back to the house, and he would get a chock full of nuts coffee cup, metal coffee cup, and that would be what the nails and the screws and all the stuff went in, and that was what he pulled from and drew from and used. And that's just how it was. I mean, it's not like it was any kind of profound or insightful thing. And they were so much more in tune with nature than my parents. And I think it was just my parents' way of trying to get away a little bit and get a little bit more income. And it's funny because having seen my grandparents with very little income and my parents with a little income, but my grandparents had a really close connection with nature and the environment and their surroundings, and mom and dad not so much. Some, but not so much. And then myself, I incorporate the best of both worlds. I do a high income, and I try to touch base with as much of nature as I can with what I'm doing. It's just I just find it very interesting how everything is cycling around, and people say, "Oh, well, you know, they're just a bunch of old redneck hicks and everything." No, I beg to differ, because those people were we stand on the shoulders of giants when we look at our grandparents. Our parents, perhaps, perhaps, perhaps we do. But our grandparents, we stand on the shoulders of giants compared to what we are now. My grandfather could do anything. I recall they were pouring a front porch one time, and he fell and broke his arm. Went to the hospital, put a cast on it, was back home in 2 or 3 hours and finished pouring the concrete for the front porch. No joke. He could have made his own cast, I guess, with the concrete, but that's what he did. This is the mentality we have to have. This is what we need to go forward. I am not knocking all of the high tech. I love high tech. You won't ever catch me living in a world without Wi-Fi or internet, the way it is. That's how I make my money. But by God, there is a connection that those people had with the natural world and the seasons and how things did and worked that we are hard pressed to match. Tell me if I'm wrong. Take care of you people.